Hello and welcome to coverage of Grand Prix Omaha. Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Hall of Famer Ben Stark, and we are underway in the finals. We have made it all the way down to 2. We had over 1,100 players in the tournament, and somehow, some way, there's no treasure cruises to be seen here in the finals. We've got Steven Speck with Amulet Bloom, a super interesting and pretty complex combo deck, playing against Erik Peters with he's playing with what has to be sort of the staple deck. There was 2 main decks here. Abzan Pod is one of them. That's what Erik's got. And there was Blue-Red Delver, which didn't make it to the finals.
No, it did put 2 copies in the top 8. We saw Pascal Maynard just lose in the semis and Stefan Barrios lose in the quarters.
Right. So a perfect start here from Erik. He's got an untapped land into a mana creature, this time Noble Hire. Passes a turn back to Steven, who's got a City of Brass, a card you don't see too often, but in the decks that just don't care about life and are more concerned with color, you'll see cards like City of Brass. And he's going to play Serum Visions. I do see an Amulet of Vigor in his hand here too.
Yeah, he has a lot of the combo pieces. He doesn't have Hivemind or Primeval Titan. One way that he can get things going is sometimes to transmute it to Laria West for a Summoner's Pact and then go and find Primeval Titan. Looking at his hand, though, I don't think it actually makes a ton of mana either. I think he's got Amulet, Summer Bloom, Azusa, but I don't think he can actually make that much mana because he doesn't have those bounce lands.
Oh, no bounce lands. Wow. Now, he did just resolve Serum Visions, so, you know, he could have set up the top of his library there. I didn't see if he put on top or bottom, but again, the perfect start here for Erik Peters continues as he's got the turn 2 Birthing Pod to start going off.
So let's see what he can find. I mean, I only see a Forest, a couple of Amulets, a Summer Bloom. I mean, you can't combo off with a hand like this.
No. Pair of Amulets. So he's ready to go, but he's going to need more than this. Also, that's the only basic in his whole deck, that Forest.
Yeah. Pretty unfortunate draw for him this game. If you change one of those Amulets into a bounce land, I think this is a pretty good hand. He would still need Hivemind or Primeval Titan.
Oh, no. Well, that's actually not that bad. So Reclamation Sage comes down here for Erik Peters, but it's not just going to destroy one of the Amulets of Vigor. It's also going to get potted away here. And, you know, he can go get something like Siege Rhino.
Yeah.
And just start getting his beat down on.
Yeah, his 4s actually aren't that effective in this matchup.
What does he have?
Siege Rhino, Murderous Redcap, Restoration Angel, and Linvala. Basically, I think he might just get Murderous Redcap, just so when he pods that away next turn, he keeps something. He could get Siege Rhino because it's a lot bigger, and it'll deal 3 damage, whereas the Redcap would only deal 2. It's a pretty cool which one of those you get here. He could have the Redcap in his hand, so that might not even be an option. But, yeah, I mean, if he gets to attack with the Siege Rhino before he pods it away, so this does do more damage.
This does 7.
This does 7, whereas if he got a Redcap, that would only do 4. But then he would get another one immediately when he potted it away, so it's basically 5.
Right.
And then he keeps the 1/1. So basically, you're gaining 3 life and doing 2 more damage immediately this way, and the other way you're keeping a 1/1.
Yeah. So for the long-term game plans, it's a little bit more short-sighted, but you can see that Erik, he wants to put the heat down on Steven. Steven is generally what we call a goldfish deck. He's not going to interact with you much at all, if at all, especially in game 1. So Steven Speck is really just trying to do what he's trying to do and go off. So Erik is trying to just put the pedal to the metal and get him here. 3rd Amulet of Vigor, not what Steven wants to see. Now, you're seeing part of the downside to playing a deck like Amulet Bloom, and part of the reason I'm surprised to see it here, honestly, is that it is not a particularly consistent deck. It can draw like 3 combo pieces of the same and then just have nowhere to go. I mean, he's 2 things short. He needs to find a bounce land and he needs to find something to ramp into.
This deck gets some draws where it's basically not going to lose, but it is an extremely high variance deck. Yeah. It's a good deck, you know, its win percentage might be there. We saw it have a pretty strong showing this weekend with a couple other players towards the top of the standings deep into day 2 with it.
We did.
But it's definitely not the most consistent deck out there. By comparison, this pod deck is one of the most consistent decks out there. Games where it doesn't draw pod, it still has great value creatures. Kitchen Finks, Siege Rhino, Voice of Resurgence, backed up by Mana Acceleration, Birds and Noble Hierarch, Wall of Roots. I mean, this deck is, and then when it does draw pod, it just exploits and exploits and exploits these creatures with comes into play abilities, leaves play abilities, comes back into play when they die abilities like Persist and Undying and things of that nature. This deck is extremely consistent. It plays very similar games almost every game.
Right. And right now, I mean, Erik Peters is putting serious heat on. He's threatening to attack for 8 next turn. Steven Speck at 10. His life total is under siege, as another Rhino would finish him off here. So Steven's got a lot of work to do and doesn't really seem to have the tools to do it. What has he drawn? He drew nothing? What just happened there?
Well, I think
The ooze eats 2 creatures. He attacks for 8.
he had a Gavany Township.
He had a township that would be exactly 10 if he had enough mana to activate it.
Yeah, I think he had exactly 5. I think he would have to tap the Hierarch if he didn't have a land to play from his hand. But if he had enough green on tap to use the ooze before on tapping, so that he could have all of his mana to use his township, then he did have 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, he must have counted it up, and that was it. So a quick game 1 goes to Erik Peters. He didn't do anything special. He did have the turn 1 mana accelerator, which let him stay, pretty consistently ahead of the curve. But just Siege Rhino ran him over there.
Yeah, that wasn't a great draw for the Amulet deck. And taking a look at the sideboard, the pod player has to be really happy to win game 1.
Oh yeah.
Because the Amulet deck doesn't really sideboard against pod. I mean, it's got some Chalice of the Voids for Delver. It's got some Pyroclasms for really fast decks. Seal of Primordium, that could kill pod, but that's not really a great plan against them because they play value creatures anyway. And they get 1 use out of the pod, even if you kill it. So I don't think that's really where you want to be. Slaughter Pact, which is pretty good against them, maybe you'll bring it in, but it's more for decks like Splinter Twin, where it can break up a creature-based combo. Thragtusk and Sigarda. Basically, no anti-pod.
There's just nothing, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you wouldn't, if you're an Amulet Bloom deck and you could just play pod all day, you'd do it, right?
Yes, I think pod is probably a pretty good matchup for them, and not the kind of deck they sideboard against, because they're the type of deck that has what we call silver bullet sideboard cards. They're looking for powerful cards in specific matchups, because their deck relies basically on the synergy between all the cards, so when they sideboard, it drastically hurts their main game plan. So they only want to take out cards if they're bringing in cards that are so powerful against these decks that they're bringing them in against that it doesn't matter if they weaken their main game plan, such as if you resolve a Chalice for 1 against Delver, or if you Pyroclasm against an Affinity deck, or something like that. By comparison, Erik Peters playing Birthing Pod, his deck is consistent, it's grindy, it's not, you could take out any 5 cards from that deck except for Birthing. Well, you could even take out Birthing Pods, but that would just hurt it a lot because it's one of the best cards in the deck. But you could take out any 5 cards from Birthing Pod, and the deck would still function very similarly. It doesn't rely on giving cards, especially if they were non-pod cards. So his sideboarding is going to help him here because he has 4 Thoughtseize. That's a straight-up anti-combo card. You take, if they have the Hivemind in the pack, you can take one of them. If they have 2 copies of one, then they can't go off. If they have 2 copies of one and 1 copy of another, you take the one that they only have 1 of. It's very disruptive to these combo decks that need to string together multiple things. Thoughtseize is excellent against combo. He's also got Entomber Exarch, basically just another discard.
Another Thoughtseize.
Yeah. Chalice I don't think is good in this matchup. Choke's not good. Creeping Corrosion isn't good. I mean, it could kill Amulet, but that's for Affinity. I mean, that's a lot of mana to kill just an Amulet that they might have already went off with.
It feels like when they play the Amulet, it's too late.
Agreed. So yeah, I think he's going to bring in these 4 Thoughtseizes and the 1 Entomber Exarch, and I think that's really powerful. I think that this Amulet deck is very good, but it's highly fragile. And if you Thoughtseize it once, maybe twice, that could definitely be the difference between them doing virtually nothing and them killing you on turn 4. And he'll probably take out some of his slower stuff, some of his stuff that's more value-oriented. I mean, Linvala, I don't think does a whole lot in this matchup. Dark Blast, obviously, not really a card in this matchup.
No.
I mean, Murderous Cut kills Primeval Titan, so maybe it's okay. Shriek Maw is not a great card in this matchup. You don't want to kill the Primeval Titan on your turn.
Right. All right, well, Amulet, Steven Speck with his Amulet deck gets to be on the play here, though. And I gotta imagine that that's going to be a pretty big upside for him.
It looks like he has a pretty good hand. He's got the Summer Bloom. I think I saw a Hivemind here. I'm not 100%. Yeah, there's one in the back of his hand.
There is a Hivemind, yep.
Interestingly, though, he has Chalice in his hand, it looks like.
He does.
I wasn't expecting that. There's a lot of varied casting costs in the Birthing Pod deck. I didn't think that was a deck you'd want to bring Chalice of the Void in against.
I mean, I'm assuming that his idea is to put it on Chalice for 1 to blank Birds of Paradise and such, but that just... Doesn't seem like a great plan.
It's not a great plan because they've already had an opportunity on their turn 1 to cast their Birds of Paradise.
Right.
They even sideboard 2 Chalice of the Voids themselves.
Yeah, that can't be good. If you're both doing it, somebody's doing it wrong. All right, here it is, though. Amulet of Vigor. Namesake for the deck. He even has a Gruul Turf in his hand there, and he's got a land drop to spare here, too.
So this is a much better hand than last game.
Right. He's going to bounce his own land back, pay 2 mana, and there it is, Chalice for 1.
Well, while I don't love the card as a sideboard card for this matchup, it is the right play to do what he just did here. He's going to lock out Thoughtseize, and they have each other's deck lists. So, I mean,
okay.
Yeah, he doesn't have anything in his deck that he's stopping, really, and I guess Serum Visions, but not a whole lot.
And he's already played one of those and
right.
Amulet.
And he's stopping, 4 Birds, 2 Hierarch, 4 Thoughtseize, and the 4 Thoughtseize there being the big thing.
Yeah, that's the big thing, because it's interesting, though. Erik had access to all of those cards and just didn't play them on turn 1.
Right.
You imagine that he has it. Would he hold a Thoughtseize?
No, he wouldn't. You almost certainly assume he doesn't have a Thoughtseize in his hand, but Stefan having most of the combo in his hand, he's looking to prevent Erik from even drawing Thoughtseizes, because if he can't be Thoughtseized, it's going to be hard for Erik to kill him before he can assemble his combo.
Sure. All right, I think we're going to see... Oh, Abrupt Decay to kill a combo piece here with the Amulet, and there's not going to be a replacement one of those anytime soon either. Steven has Summer Bloom, gets to play 2 lands, and then the 3rd land there and gain a life, lose a life, so okay. I mean, he's going to untap with 6 mana.
And so the interesting thing is, he has a Hive Mind for next turn, but the pact he has in his hand is Pact of Negation.
So you actually need a target for that.
Right.
That's awkward. This has gone pretty well, though, for Steven, all things considered. So far, Erik hasn't done much. Wall of Roots on turn 3 is the big payoff here. What else does he have? Well, Voice of Resurgence. Still, effectively a bear in this spot. Oops, there's another Amulet off the top for him.
That's actually a pretty good draw for him.
How come?
Well, I think on the following turn, he can cast it and then maybe pact it.
You're right.
Which would then give Erik a combo, a copy of a Pact of Negation.
Which he definitely can't pay for.
Right.
Especially with no Birds of Paradise or Noble Hierarchs available. That's pretty funny.
Yeah, and if this works like that, which is how I think it does work, it's pretty funny, even because the Chalice would counter the Amulet at this point.
It would anyway,
but it should still work, because I think he can tap the 1, play the Amulet, with the Chalice ability on the stack.
Totally.
Pact of Negation his own Amulet, and then the Hive Mind will make a copy of Pact of Negation for Erik. He can counter whatever he wants. It doesn't matter, because it can't counter itself.
Right.
And then he has to untap, pay 5, including 2 blue, which he does not have,
and
or lose the game. Yeah.
So Erik has a 1-turn window to get rid of that Hive Mind here?
Yeah, but he might be able to.
If he puts anything on the stack?
It looks like he's going to be able to, because he has Birthing Pod.
So he can go get Reclamation Sage.
It's pretty funny.
Now, what happens if Steven counters the Birthing Pod there? He can't pay for it himself, his own pact?
No, if he had double blue...
He could have.
That would be a really nice play.
Brutal.
Yeah, but he only had 1 blue mana, the Mana Confluence, so he couldn't actually make that play, or he would die during his upkeep.
So if either of those bounce lands were Simic Growth Chamber, the one that he has 4 of, he could have won the game there.
That's pretty incredible, right?
Yeah.
What a way to win if he Pact of Negations there, untaps, pays the 5, and then passes back.
Oop, easy.
Actually, well, would the copy of Pact be able to then counter his Pact? I'm not sure.
Sure.
It can't copy itself, so you have to pay for it. You end up having to pay for it. But if he had played Pact of Negation there on the Birthing Pod, it's possible that the hive-minded copy would then have been used to counter the original Pact of Negation. So the pod would still resolve. He would go fetch up...
but it would be too late because his opponent had still played a Pact of Negation, right?
Oh, right. So he could kill the hive mind, but he would still lose on his next upkeep. Yeah. As is now, though, this game is kind of,
This is getting out of control here, and Erik Peters is really making a move here to become our champion. It all looks so good for Steven, and all of a sudden he's way behind. He's in hardcast Cinnamon Spirit Guide mode, and that is not going to get the job done here. What are the type of outs that Steven can find here? Another Hive Mind?
I'm not even sure if he realistically has outs. He can cast a Primeval Titan,
pretty good here.
Yeah, without an Amulet in play, though, it's not like he's going to be able to give it haste or anything.
Right, and here is the Exarch. And he just has to show him an Amulet and the Pact, so Erik can just take the Pact away and mean that Steven Speck has effectively a 0-card hand here. The Amulet just gets countered, doesn't do anything.
Yeah, if Steven would have held that Spirit Guide, he might have had the opportunity to draw exactly Hive Mind, cast it, use the Spirit Guide for a mana, cast the Amulet, and then pack his own Amulet.
Yeah.
After playing it, I'm not sure that he had any outs, but that would have required him top decking exactly Hive Mind exactly this turn also anyway.
Right.
So it seems like it's a pretty unlikely scenario for Steven Speck right now.
If he even gets one more turn, he's going to need to draw something pretty spicy right here. That is that a Primeval Titan?
I think it's a Tolaria West,
Oh,
maybe?
it's a Tolaria West, I think you're right. Now, Tolaria West, with some time, could get him another pack, but I don't think it's going to matter. I think we're going to have our champion, Erik Peters, here very shortly. Steven Speck's at 13. He's not taking 13 this turn, but he's seen enough, and Erik Peters is our champion very calmly, finishing off Steven Speck with his Amulet Bloom deck, and Abzan Pod's still on top in Modern.
Yeah, and Pod can be deceptively disruptive. I mean, it's got those creatures. Like we saw, he searched out the Reclamation Sage for the win. And with the Birthing Pods, it's not like he has one copy of Reclamation Sage, it's like he has 5. Because he didn't actually draw the Reclamation Sage itself. He drew Birthing Pod and used it to search out a Reclamation Sage, killing the Hive Mind and effectively winning the game.
Right there. So Birthing Pod still on top in Modern, and you can see why. It won him that game. Probably won him a whole bunch of games over the course of the weekend.